let's have a little chat about colonialism. So if you're not in the UK, you probably haven't heard that the owner of Manchester United, Jim Ratcliffe, a man who moved to Monaco to avoid paying tax, basically came out and said the UK is being invaded and gave false figures about migration, all in an effort basically to appease the new right-wing party, the Reform Party, who he's now got buddy-buddy with their leader. But let's get some books that are actually about colonialism. We're probably going to be focusing on British colonialism, except for one of the books, because that's what I'm most well versed in. But we will talk about them. You can get these books in the description down below if you would like, or pick them up from your local library. Let's start off with Insurgent Empire. Insurgent Empire was a book I spoke about in a recent video as well, but Insurgent Empire is all about the resistance to colonialism, the resistance to empire. Basically, Insurgent Empire is about the movements, the oftentimes violent movements that were had against the British Empire across its colonial history, ranging from Jamaica to India to Kenya, all over the world. And the author talks about the importance of the armed and oftentimes violent resistance to the empire, and also explains why people had to take these steps to fight against the British Empire, including the horrific things the British did to them, the economic things the British did to them, and so on and so forth. It is a really good book. It's quite long, it's quite meaty, so, you know, take your time reading this one if you do read it, but once you read it, you will get an understanding as to why people are so vehemently, and actually more so now, I feel, but this might just be my bubble, so I won't say for everyone, you know, accepting that actually violent resistance is perhaps the best tool we have resisting against colonial empires that don't care about us. You should listen to this quote from Kwame Ture.
Dr. King's policy was that nonviolence would achieve the gains for black people in the United States. His major assumption was that if you are nonviolent, if you suffer, your opponent will see your suffering and will be moved to change his heart. That's very good. He only made one fallacious assumption. In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience.
Up next is Wretched of the Earth. This is a book that is actually about French colonialism in Algeria. Not just about that, but it is Frantz Fanon's magnum opus. Again, I'm pretty sure I spoke about this maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. This book is all about how the Algerians were forced into having to basically again take up violent resistance, but Frantz Fanon in this one really does go into the things that the French did in Algeria through their colonialism, which forced Algerians to have to take up arms as their only means to be able to resist the colonization. If you think about it, Jim Ratcliffe saying Britain is being colonized right now and comparing it to the things that Frantz Fanon describes in this book that the French did to the Algerians, they are not the same thing. The closest thing, frankly, to what the French have done to the Algerians is what people like Sir Jim Ratcliffe do to Brits and people around the world. Frankly, the closest thing you have to colonization in Britain is the colonization by the ruling class. It's not colonization, but colonization is the word we're using here. It is simply what the ruling class does for basically the entirety of history, and currently now under neoliberal capitalism, or post-capitalism if you believe in that. So, this book, Fanon talks about how the French basically ground the Algerians down, made it so hard for them to operate in their own society, made them second class in their own society, so much so that the Algerians were like, we can't take this anymore, we have to violently resist. Slightly more so than the first book, it actually goes into the material conditions of the Algerians, whereas in the first book it does, but it is mostly about the resistance movements in that first book. This one, Fanon does go more into the conditions the Algerians were living in and why he believed that their violent resistance was so imperative against French colonialism. This is the only book we're going to be talking about that isn't about British colonialism here, but How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, I think, is the biggest one that you should definitely read. Walter Rodney, fantastic writer, one of my favourites. Decolonial Marxism is my favourite of his books. However, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa is all about colonialism. How the Europeans colonised Africa, stripped it of its wealth, stripped it of its people, and have made it so Africa is underdeveloped. And even to this day, although Walter Rodney sadly was assassinated many, many years ago, Walter Rodney spoke about the conditions that the Europeans, even after independence, they have set in place to keep Africa, and even like the Caribbean as well, subjugated to Europe. France is a big boy in terms of this, particularly with the CAF and how they can control kind of the monetary value of much of the currency in French West Africa. But this book goes really deep into it, the things that the Europeans went through to underdevelop Africa, how Africa became underdeveloped by, Europeans deliberately building infrastructure built only for extraction, how they extracted, the people that they put in places of power to help them extract, and how that is still impacting Africa to this day. Arguably, if you're not going to read if you're going to read only one of the books I'm suggesting to you today, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa is the one that you should read. Walter Rodney is great. Highly recommend Walter Rodney. Just read this one. And the final book is me cheating. It is all of William Dalrymple's books. No, not all of them, but a wide variety of William Dalrymple's books. William Dalrymple basically concentrated on Mughal era India. He did also write a book about Afghanistan in the time and the kind of the Britishers' influence on there and the attempts of colonialism in Afghanistan and the colonialism actually in India. I could narrow it down to one book because the books are oftentimes covering the same time period, but segmented into different things within those time periods. So I would recommend quite a few of his books, whether it be The Last Mughal, The Anarchy, the book about Afghanistan, The King Returns. So a lot of his books cover the British in India at that time, but also does talk about India without the British beforehand. But you can really see where the British, but not just when Britain as a country colonized India, but if you don't know, the East India Company, which was a privately traded company, but was such a big part of the British economy that when it was about to go bust, Britain had to bail out the East India Company because the East India Company made up so much of Britain's economy. So even before the British Raj, Britain was colonizing India and extracting the wealth and killing the people and stealing the things there. That's how intense British colonialism was, because obviously they were also colonizing in the US. They lost that in the US. They spent a lot of money in that war. They lost a bunch of money there, and they were busy fighting wars in Europe at the same time as well. And then they were like, well, we need to go and take in, we were helping this private company take India. They weren't doing a very good job, and then the British took over, and no, his books do cover these things. He does cover specifically what is happening in India during these things as well. So he is very good. He is my favorite white boy, and really highly recommended. And I don't think his books are very hard to read. Again, I think I spoke about these books recently as well. They're not difficult. They are dense. They are very dense. And if you don't have like a precursory knowledge, maybe they will be a little bit more difficult. I struggled a lot with the Afghanistan book because I didn't really know anything about Afghanistan's history, but the ones that were more so about the Mughal Empire and Britain and India prior to the Mughal Empire and afterwards, then yes, perhaps I did know a little bit more, but he's still a very accessible writer. Very briefly, there is another book that many people used to recommend, and I think I might have many years ago, but I can't in good conscience tell you to go off and buy this, but I does feel remiss to not mention it. Shashi Tharoor's Inglorious Empire. It was a book that a lot of people, especially in India, were talking about, hey, this is a book all about British colonialism, especially here in the subcontinent. However, Shashi Tharoor as an individual, not great. So I personally won't tell you to go off and buy this book, but someone might just comment, why didn't you mention it? This is me mentioning it. It was a pretty decent read. It was very accessible. Like, it was pretty simple. So... but still, like, Shashi Tharoor as an individual, not great. I don't really want you to go off and buy the book, but for posterity reasons, yeah, Inglorious Empire is there. So those are a couple of books that actually cover the impact of colonialism. Once again, this was just Britain and one book on France, and this wasn't even deeply covering many of the nations they colonized. Like, you could probably find a book that goes so much deeper into Africa, like how Europe underdeveloped Africa is probably actually a very big one. So we're gonna time jump back in time. I'm gonna put that in earlier, and then this is gonna be very confusing at the end. Now we are back to where I was. Did I talk about how Europe underdeveloped Africa? Perhaps I did. So those are, you know, some books. But again, even then, I've not, you know, spoken about Latin America being colonized. I've not read many books about the other countries in Europe colonizing the rest of the world. Like, there's probably a whole bunch of resources about French Indochina, which is, where Vietnam and other countries are at the moment. We could talk about how the Dutch colonized Indonesia. I am actually going to read a book on that this month, or at least starting reading a book on that this month. So again, there is so much. Jim Ratcliffe saying Britain is being colonized is insanity if you actually understand colonialism. If you actually know what happened in colonialism, you would never say Britain is being colonized. Even now, we have neo-colonialism. We have countries across Europe, the United States, colonizing, neo-colonizing, so it's not the exact same one-to-one thing as colonialism, neo-colonizing other countries, corporations doing that, companies doing that. Jim Ratcliffe is closer to being a colonizer than immigrants coming to the United Kingdom ever will be. Reel it in, mate, reel it in. But that is some books on colonialism. If you are interested in them, they will be in the description down below. I'll only put one William Dalrymple down below, but he has a whole selection of books. Even his son, apparently his books are very good as well. When that comes out in paperback, I might pick that up, and when it's on sale, and after I clear my backlog. But yes, you can pick up those books in the description down below, or get them from your local library. Thank you for watching. I do want to say a special thank you to my members. Members get access to the book club, the movie club. They get additional videos. They get to help shape the way the channel is planned, run, made, everything, all the layers of a channel. So you can join from as little as £1 a month by hitting join down below or on my channel. If not, regardless, thank you for getting this part of the video. It is very, very helpful. I'm going to reel myself in. I'm going to sign off now because I'm going to get angry. But thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share the video with a friend or family member. And hey, I hope you read a great book today. And Jim Ratcliffe, you should go